How are you, Sam?
Hey, Amal, how are
Trying to put this thing.
And supporters of not only the Brickell Homeowners Association, but also now the Urban Core Community Coalition. And so we appreciate them providing us access to their Zoom line, which, as I said, is not free. So we thank them, and please, as you know, we always say, look into Christie House. They do some wonderful work with our children. They are our Children's Advocacy Center. And especially at this time, they have a lot of great information for you and your family. I want to also thank our partners who helped put together this event, the Brickell Homeowners Association, our parent organization, the Downtown Neighbors Alliance, Roads Neighborhood Association, and also the Brickell Area Association, and all of our other Urban Core partners and stakeholders. We are excited about this evening. We have a great lineup here for you this evening. I want to thank the candidates, all of them, and their staffs and campaigns who worked with us in scheduling this very unique event and these virtual forums, and all of you and your staffs have been wonderful and so cooperative, and we really appreciate it. I just wanted to go over briefly a couple rules for our meeting, which is general for all of our meetings. With the Zoom meeting, obviously, if we run into any issues, connection issues, or other problems, I will go ahead as the host and leave the meeting and crash the meeting for us all, and I'll send a note out to panelists and others on a new private meeting line. We haven't had any issues. I can't imagine today will be any different. I also just wanted to let you know that the forum today is going to be a little bit different because we do have fewer candidates. We're going to be able to spend more time on each of the races, and our moderator is going to have about 25 minutes with each race to go through some questioning for each of our candidates. They'll each get the same question. They'll have 2 minutes to respond to those questions. And then should the moderator need it, she will call for any kind of follow-up, but we are not looking for any rebuttals, no talkovers, and certainly no follow-ups. We want to really get through as many questions and issues as we possibly can for each of our races. And I guess other than that, I want to thank, last but not least, our moderator this evening, Amal Kabani, the president of the Downtown Neighbors Alliance. Amal has been a partner with BHA and with the UCCC since the very beginning for us at the Urban Core Community Coalition, but for years with BHA. And we've been looking at ways together to unite the core and really as a force, an urban core force, make sure that the issues, some of the common issues that we face are addressed by public officials. So we couldn't think of a better person to serve as our moderator this evening and really guide you through this process of deciding who it is you want to serve you in the urban core. So without further ado, I want to introduce you to Amal Kabani, our moderator. Amal, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Sam. Good evening. Welcome to the Urban Core Virtual Candidate Forum. As you heard, I am Amal Kabani, President, Downtown Neighbors Alliance. It is an honor to moderate this forum, an important part of our local system of government that has a direct impact on our everyday quality of life. Commissioner Eileen Higgins and Commissioner Renier Diaz de la Portilla, is he with us?
I have not seen him check in yet.
Okay.
Amal, as soon as he does, I will obviously bring him up, but the show goes on as we told all of our candidates.
Sounds good. Thank you for being here with us, Commissioner Higgins.
a pleasure.
This segment is dedicated to the County District 5 race. As you heard, we have been given less than 30 minutes to go over a wide range of topics, and I will be asking you a question and give you 2 minutes to answer. Starting with trying to get a sense of your understanding of our local neighborhood need. What would you say are the top 5 critical emerging issues that we face today? And what will you do in your first 100 days, should you win this race, to address these issues?
Well, I think, as we all know, things have changed a little bit because of COVID. And I probably would put small business survival at the top for us, particularly those, these urban core neighborhoods, downtown Brickell and our friends up in Edgewater. Particularly with this working at home, we don't have as many people coming into our neighborhoods, and so I worry about our ground floor retail and our restaurants. Getting a cafecito in the morning, having lunch, going to happy hour. So making sure that those businesses survive and thrive. And so the county is actively mobilizing CARES Act money. And I think you all probably know many of the small businesses that have already received funding from them. As a matter of fact, I was just over at Nui the other day, and she hadn't applied yet. So she's now applying for that, because anything we can do to help them offset the costs will be crucial. So I think that is a real priority to keep the businesses we have here going. And I think you've seen a lot of street transformations, and the county was very quick in approving the allowing restaurants to take over streets. Because the city can ask, but the county actually has to approve that. So worked very, very closely with the Department of Transportation and Public Works to get that approval literally in 48 hours. The DDA proposed a plan, and we've got that done. Transportation continues, to be a priority. I think many residents of the urban core are either have given up a car or would love to completely give up a car. And so continuing to expand the places that we can go on transit from Brickell and downtown, because we are the neighborhood where people are willing to get on a trolley or get on the mover. And so there's a lot of projects that probably in those first 100 days, under whoever the next mayor is, will be voted on, decided on, from figuring out how we connect Miami to Miami Beach. Those discussions actually are starting next week, but probably won't be finished until the new mayor takes the seat. And then also we just approved the studies to look at adding the Metro Mover going north. You all also know that housing affordability is an issue. And actually, and I'm going to link now, I'll just talk about 2 things at once: housing affordability and lack of school seats, and lack of a high school and lack of enough space in middle school for our kids here is going to hinder the development of this neighborhood. So we actually finally have the plan submitted for both workforce housing and affordable housing and school seats to break ground in February. And that's affordable housing in Brickell. And then we have an RFP that's about to go out on the street closer to the river behind Government Center. That will also be a building that will have mixed incomes in there. So I've really focused on, when the county has land, how do we make sure we're building affordable housing so that we can continue to keep young professionals, professional families, whether it's firefighters, nurses, doctors. Well, doctors probably don't need affordable housing. I shouldn't stereotype them, but anyway, but physicians' assistants, all those people have great professional jobs, but really don't make a ton of money. I mentioned schools. It's a priority for me. to try to figure out how to use some county land to bring particularly a high school. We're starting to add more school seats with, I guess they're now calling it the Brickell World School, although we all fondly refer to it as Southside Expansion. But the RTZ the master plan around Government Center, as we go forward with putting all of that out there, in my opinion, has to include space to make a high school available for there. And then, you know, I don't know if it's last but not least, I know I'm supposed to do 5, but I'll do 6. We obviously have sea level rise to worry about in our bay because we all live along the bay. So I think you'll see a lot of progress there. And then we continue to need to make progress on homelessness and homeless services in this neighborhood. And I think you all probably saw, we got a new reading on Pottinger. So, so we will, hopefully the county attorneys are going through that. So thanks.
Thank you.
And Commissioner, I'm sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to give you guys a heads up, and I forgot to mention this early on. When we have both candidates, it'll be a 2-minute time limit on each of the questions, and you'll hear a sound from me letting you know when the 2 minutes is up. But I didn't want to interrupt because I didn't mention it at the beginning.
Thank you, Sam.
Interrupt,
I'll make it simple for you, Commissioner Higgins, for the next 2. I only look for a yes or no answer on the next couple of questions that I'm going to merge in one. Access is very important to us, access to our representatives. You have a track record that has shown via Nancy Jackson, who has been a wonderful extension of your team, to be present at almost every single meeting that we've had, as well as access to her via text or email. She's always been there. Yes or no, will you continue? Should you win this race, will you continue with that same process, if you will?
Yes, 100%.
You mentioned earlier the expansion and the notion of urbanism. Obviously, the urban lifestyle is very different from a suburban lifestyle. Oftentimes, we lack a representative that understands the need for a community that is more urban driven. Green space being one of those scarcities that we don't have, as well as ground play and playground areas. What would you say you would do differently to encourage more green space and potentially look at what can be done with the West Brickell requesting development of a pocket playground park to be located under their local Metro Mover station?
Yeah, so in downtown and Brickell, we have to be creative to find green space. So there are a couple of things that I think are great. We got the county approval for pretty much $500,000 to build out a dog park under the First Street Metro Mover station, because we know if we just make that a passive green space, we could have a lot of homeless people gathering there. So we need it to be active and active all the time. And I don't know how many dogs we have in downtown, but it seems like a ton. And so the county is working on a design for that dog park, and in partnership with the DDA, they've agreed to maintain it. And we are in the midst of going through getting the approval. Because it is under a transit way, we've got to go through the federal transit agency to get their permission. So this is the first time we're kind of going through this for the Metro Mover. And then what we have to do, actually was just over, I think Nancy and I went over to look at the site where we might be able to have a playground. We were over there maybe 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, time flies. And that site to me is a really great place to have a playground. We know we have a willing partner in maintenance, which is really important for the FTA. And then the next step for us and for me is to identify a funding source and also make sure we know the answers to the questions. The other thing about green spaces around Government Center, when that RFP goes out to develop those 23 acres, there needs to be a park there, not just grass. And so I don't know if you know Maria Nardi from the County Parks Department. We don't have a county park in District 5 except for the beach. But she is a world-class park designer with a Harvard degree in this kind of work. And so she has been involved in thinking how that green space can be activated as we redesign that. So there's options. We have to be creative. And Underline is opening October 19th. We're having our little first ribbon cut. So
thank you, Commissioner Higgins. So to caveat from here, with the green space, obviously comes the need for safety and security. Oftentimes, unfortunately, the element of the homelessness is blurred with the element of criminal vagrant that infiltrates the homelessness population, creating an unsafe environment. What would you do differently should you get reelected?
Well, one of the things I think, unfortunately, the terrible situation on the Metro Mover, but it showed the need for transferring security around the Metro Mover and our Metro Rail system from transit to the police department. All of the security guards just reported to the transit department, which, you know, those people are supposed to keep trains running. They're not experts at life safety. And so I got agreement with current Mayor Jimenez to essentially transfer the leadership of that under the police director. And they have begun already with our county attorney's office to look at, now that we've gotten the new court ruling, literally we've only got it a week ago, on Pottinger, how can we adjust the tactics? Because we all know, you know, the downtown Brickell folks, we all know that we are hamstrung in the way that other parts of the county are not because of Pottinger. But as far as I can tell, as of last week, Pottinger doesn't exist. So we have to see if that enables our homeless services, as well as people, as our police department, to make some changes. And so we look forward to some discussions that will be county and city related, because it's a joint, you know, you are in the city of Miami, and unless you're up on the Metro Mover, it's the City of Miami Police Department that is responsible for that. And Judge Leifman's new facility for mental health will be opening, and that will finally give a safe space next year for these folks. They're mentally ill. You know, we know that, and we need them to be in a safe space. So that will be opening next year too.
Thank you, Commissioner Higgins. I'd like to move to the topic of COVID-19. We find ourselves very discouraged by not only the mishandlement, if you will, and the lack of leadership when it comes to COVID-19, but most importantly, we have struggled as homeowner associations in trying to decipher the paperwork that came from the mayor and came from the county when it had to do with how we needed to manage the towers. As you know, and as you yourself live in a tower, the rules are very different and our shared common elements are very different. And it was very disconcerting to see that no one at the county level thought that the city of Miami does exist, and it does have over, 40 towers. And all they were talking about was just plain good old suburbia. What would you do differently? How would you handle this in terms of A, communication, B, a focus on the type of condominium lifestyle, and then C, the handling of enforcement moving forward?
So I think you're right. In the beginning, Mayor Jimenez, made some things that didn't work. It didn't, and by the way, it didn't work for sometimes townhouse owners, and it certainly didn't work for a lot of condo owners. And it wasn't just downtown in Brickell; it was Aventura, it's Surfside. I mean, it's all of Miami Beach. I mean, there are a lot of places where this communal living works. And I can tell you, Nancy, your favorite person, Nancy and I spent a lot of time with property managers individually on the phone because the county instructions weren't very clear, to basically let them know they should be thinking about gyms kind of the same way as they're thinking about outside gyms. But you're right, it was confusing. I'm not going to tell you that I would have done any better. I probably would have, because I happen to live in a tower, but I might have been, better at handling some of the suburban issues. So I think it was confusing. What made it even more confusing is the city of Miami and the refused to be on the same page as the county. And so there was a lot of conflicting information as the city was deciding to do things differently. So you were looking at what the county was saying, and then you were looking at the city was saying, and I was going, well, what the heck? You know, what do we tell people? The curfews are different. The capacities are different. That seems to all, have gone away. The city is communicating much better with the county. But even things like how do you open your pools, none of that was handled, none of that, nobody knew how to do that. So yeah, there were a lot of errors in communication. I do think we are all very lucky because, I have a district that is very, very diverse economically. I also represent Little Havana, and East Little Havana, based on the numbers, over 35% of the residents have had COVID. Right? Because they are living in really dense, very small apartments, families 4, 6, 9 in a unit, and there are essential workers. And so they can't take a day off. They are not working from home. And so what I will say is the condo management companies, as they worked on this as individuals, did a great job, because when you look at the per capita rate of COVID in our 2 main zip codes, right? 33131, 33132, it is among the lowest in the county. And so we the collective people that live together and ride in elevators together and hang out in lobbies together, and we should feel really good about the fact that we put our masks on and we limited the people in the elevators. And so this neighborhood did a great job at communicating on COVID. And now I just encourage you, we've got a ton of test sites. I go to the one at Salvation Army once a week. I get tested. It's free. There is absolutely no reason for anybody to not know their status. It's simple. It's easy. There's no waiting, and you no longer need an appointment. And that's one of the ways we're going to keep this virus under control, is each of us knowing whether or not we're asymptomatic.
So your constituents have dubbed Nancy Jackson as F. Whisperer. She is. And under that umbrella, I would like to segue to my next question, which has to do with Key Biscayne traffic lights, 6 of them to be specific, that have little or no impact on Miami-Dade traffic. What would you do to allow the village of Key Biscayne to control its traffic light, to optimize local traffic, and improve on obsolete technology and so forth?
So I'll eventually let our District 7 candidates talk about that, because that's their district, but I will let everybody know, because this is a very hope-filled project. The county just spent a lot of money purchasing an automated traffic management system, which will mean that every single traffic light in the entire county will be upgraded and will be computer controlled and will be able to sense traffic. And for those of us in the urban core, one of the things that is really cool about this system is, one, it knows not to hold a red light if there's nobody there waiting at it when it could change. 2, depending on the corridor, we're going to be able to know whether a cyclist is there. And then for us, those of us who hate the Brickell Bridge openings, it will, right now our system doesn't allow to just let east-west traffic move, but this will be able to be programmed and connected to the Brickell Bridge and other drawbridges so that we can move traffic around in another way. So it's going to take a long time to implement, but essentially it's a very cool project, and my guess is it will help our friends on Key Biscayne.
I'd like to close with the last question around resiliency. So resiliency, environment protection, and sea rise are a hot topic. And as we all know, the Army Corps had a project to build a wall along the bay. Obviously, the residents are very concerned about that. While we do value the spirit, if you will, of that project, we have concerns as to what will it look like? Will it be environmentally friendly? What will it do to our real estate values? What would you comment on that, and how would you get involved to steer this project in the right direction?
Well, I actually, in January, because I had seen the draft about the wall, I flew up to Washington because I had a few little things we needed to do in Washington. I needed to bring home some affordable housing money and others. And I met with Senator Rubio's staff and basically said to them, this is just not going to work for us. And got that comments in early. And then through 3 of the other boards that I serve on your behalf, the DDA, myself just as a commissioner, and then also the Miami River Commission. In all 3 roles, we have commented very, very strongly against that. And part of the reason we commented strongly against that wall is because the Army Corps did all their work in isolation, and they have not yet included, right? We had that incredible analysis from the Urban Land Institute.
Yes.
A ton of solutions from Resilient 305. And so we needed to incorporate all of those. And I don't know if you've seen, if you haven't seen it, I'll send you the designs of kind of floating islands that we put in place from the DDA. So we actually spent money trying to redesign that. So if you haven't seen it, it's a very beautiful solution that's also resilient. So just, you know how to get us, and we'll send them your way.
Well, thank you for your time. I see that
we did get Commissioner Renier Diaz de la Portilla arrived, so maybe you want to give him that last question, and then we'll do the closeout.
Absolutely. Well, welcome. Thank you for being with us. And if you want to unmute yourself, because I see that you are on mute.
Thank you. How are you?
Nice to meet you. We covered
nice to see you. I met you. I met most of you in the past. I've been around a long time. I met most of you. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for the invitation, Joseph, and thank you all for hosting this forum.
So since we only have a few minutes left, why don't I allow you to speak about what would be the top 5 topics that you feel, as you did the research about downtown and the needs of our community, that you will tackle in your first 100 days in office should you win this race?
Well, I don't need to do research because I've lived in this community my entire life. So let's start with that. I was born and raised in this community, born and raised in Shenandoah. Been here for 48 years. I'm 49 years old. I went away to go to Cornell University to get a master's degree in public administration. Came back, got a law degree, been practicing law, served this community as a school board member, served this community as a state representative. So I'm very familiar with the community. I don't need to research the issues. I know the issues. I've lived the issues all the way from Hurricane Andrew through COVID-19. I mean, we've had a lot of crises in this community and a lot of issues that we had to overcome as a community and as elected official. And I served the foreclosure crisis as well as a state representative. So I think I'm very familiar with the community. What I will tell you is that I will work with the community because I know the community to solve our problems. I missed the earlier part of the debate, but if you're talking about the environment, if you're talking about transportation, if you're talking about affordable housing, I've done it all. I've been involved in all these issues and I've resolved a lot of problems. And, I served on the housing board, the Florida Housing Finance Corporation. I served on that board as a board member. I served as a school board member and I served as state representative through many crises. So I think I'm very familiar with representing our community. I know the community and I think I do a good job, an effective job in getting through the COVID-19 crisis and drafting a plan to move beyond COVID-19, I think, to reopen our economy. We have to do it cautiously, we have to do it responsibly, but we have to reopen our economy.
What would you say was the most proudest thing that you have accomplished for downtown residents while you were doing, all the service to the community that you've mentioned?
Well, I never represented downtown. That's never been part of my district.
Something that is urban related.
Something that is urban related? Oh my God. I supported the Underline. My brother was a state senator, gave $10 million to start the Underline. My other brother, Alex Diaz de la Portilla, raised or got $10 million from the state government to dredge the river, the Miami River, which is also in the urban core. we have spent millions and millions of dollars redeveloping Miami-Dade County as public servants, as public officials. We're a family that is a family that serves the public. And I don't think that's a negative thing. I think it's a positive thing. Unfortunately, my opponent likes to attack my family and says that, you know, because we've been around for a long time, we're part of this community, we're born and raised here, that's a bad thing to be involved in civic life in Miami-Dade County. I think that's a good thing. So we've done a lot more for the urban core than Alid Higgins has. I guarantee you that.
All right. Well, thank you for your time. This pretty much concludes this first section of today's forum. And we're gonna move on now to the mayoral. So I see that we have with us County Commissioner Daniela Levine-Cava. Do we have Commissioner Bovo with us?
I have not seen Commissioner Bovo, Amal, so we can go on and proceed. And as soon as he comes in, I will let you know.
All right, sounds good. I'm gonna start with the same question, if you don't mind, in terms of, you know, trying to understand whether you lived in a downtown, specific Miami or New York or anywhere, what would you say you can relate as being challenges, if you have walked our streets, that you would tackle in your first 100 days should you win the mayoral seat?
Well, thank you very much, Amal. Thank you to the entire organization and to all the viewers. Very happy to be with you this evening and have a chance to talk about your concerns. I did live in New York City. I did live in the road section. I did live on Brickell. So I definitely have a lot of urban experience. And of course, now we all must first and foremost stabilize our health. So I just want to put that out, not an urban issue only. You talked about the differences of living in a tower versus living in suburbia. Obviously that creates some additional complications, but at the end of the day, our health is number one. And I do not think we've had the proper public health infrastructure in place. We've added testing. We don't want to discourage people from getting testing, quite the opposite. If anyone's been exposed, we want them to definitely do that. Obviously the masking, the disinfecting, the social distancing. We are seeing spikes in many states, and our cases are creeping up, not yet at a spike level, but we know that as we're out and about more and the schools open and businesses reopen, we must continue to take these precautions. The virus is still with us. So just want to say, as mayor, I will be appointing a chief medical officer. That will be one of my very first acts. Then, of course, our economy. We are a county of small businesses predominantly. About 80% of our businesses have 10 or fewer employees. Obviously in the downtown area, we have large businesses, but we also have many small businesses. And the lack of foot traffic, as was said previously, the fact that many had to close means that they were not able to reopen. Many could not sustain the expenses associated with taking the necessary steps to be refurbished. Maybe they didn't, if they were a restaurant, maybe they couldn't open safely. They didn't have space for outside dining. If they were retail, maybe they couldn't move online. I mean, so many challenges. So I have championed the cause of small businesses in my district. I've created a small business incubator and academy, and I would bring that countywide. And certainly for the urban areas, I would want to provide the technical assistance, the marketing help, the back office functioning, the mentoring, so that our businesses could move forward. And we've done a lot with our CARES dollars to support small businesses during this breach. But unfortunately, it's going to run out before we're fully recovered. And definitely we have to plow forward and hope for additional federal money as well. Affordability. Everybody, affordability is one of our biggest issues throughout the county in the urban core. We still have areas that are somewhat more affordable, but obviously there's gentrification that is creating increasing pressure for people that live in the urban core, making it extremely difficult as people move farther out to commute to jobs, which relates then to the transit problem and needing world-class transit and improvements to buses for the people who are bus dependent, as well as the major corridors. And then I'll mention environment. and water. Flooding, clearly, you know, the city passed the Miami Forever after a hurricane had us people swimming down the street. So we know that the infrastructure is critically important to deal with sea level rise, also increased severe storms. The city is moving forward with some of those, but we have to work as a part of the county. We must work collaboratively with the cities so that cities don't go it alone.
Commissioner.
Thank you. Thank you. I see. Yes, I see that.
Commissioner Bovo is here, and there was a schedule. We did make a scheduling mistake. We bumped their race up. We can continue, but I want to make sure we give Commissioner Bovo adequate time to answer the question also.
Absolutely. Commissioner Bovo, nice to meet you. I see that you are on mute. Should you please, unmute yourself. I will ask you the same question. You have 2 minutes to answer, please. And the first question is in reference to the most important top 5, if you will, emerging issues that you have detected being a weakness in downtown that you would tackle as soon as you are to win this race, should you win this race. What would those top 5 be?
Well, I think one of the things that we need to consider is that there has to be collaboration with the city of Miami, because many of the areas that you're describing fall within the jurisdiction of the city of Miami. So there's got to be collaboration, there's got to be communication, and I think we need to address jointly the issues of quality of life. Well, what I'm seeing is that urban style lifestyle that we're seeing, there is void of enough green space for everybody in the area. So we need to work on parkland areas. I'm encouraged by what we're seeing with the underline, which I think is going to help greatly, but it's still not going to be enough. I think we also, it seems to be an issue of homelessness that is starting to percolate more and more and encroaching into areas that were once void of living space. And we're starting to see more and more of that. And we need to continue our collaboration and perhaps increase our efforts with Camilla's House, the Homeless Trust, Miami Rescue Mission, Chapman Partnership, all those agencies that are such godsends to help us in that space. You know, and I think, you know, one of the things that becomes huge now is how do we get our economy back in shape? How do we get it back opened up? You know, work with the restaurants in the area that not only creates an ability to keep our the customers safe, but also the employees that they have. You know, we got to get back to a space where our employees, the folks that are working in these restaurants and businesses, are able to put money on the table or food on the table, you know, take care of their families. And in many cases, we're seeing an increase in domestic violence calls. We're seeing our hotlines for suicide prevention just really blow up with folks concerned about this pandemic, the direction that government gives, that sometimes it's conflicting directions that government gives. And I think it's created a lot of stress. And I think we need to collaborate. This is not government just acting on its own. I think we have to work with businesses to create ways of opening up our economy. And, you know, small business, mom and pops, I don't think they need incubators, quite honestly. I think we just need to give them the space to be able to create. And then, you know, water quality issues, obviously, you know, many live on a bay that we want to see alive, not a dead bay. And I think the county's going to have a lot of work to do to make sure that we address these issues in a way that that enhances the quality of life of many of the residents in that urban core.
Thank you. I'd like to continue with you, Commissioner Bovo, if you don't mind.
But all right.
Something that you mentioned at the debate that was broadcasted had to do with obviously detecting a sense of annexation, if you will, from residents when they are not receiving the proper services from their governmental, you know, officials, if you will. And interestingly enough, school is a big topic for our neighborhood. And as I hear you mention your top 5, it has more of a business orientation rather than resident orientation. What would you say to us about schools, and what would you do differently to, and I'm not even talking about quality school, mind you, I'm just talking about school, because we literally don't have a school. So what would you say you would help to do to bring a school to downtown Miami?
Well, you know, I want to just clarify something before I make a comment on it. You know, I mentioned about quality of life issues. It's not about just business, okay? You know, we talked about parks because it's quality of life issues. It's not just businesses. I've talked about park space in the area. I talked about water quality issues. You know, these are quality issues that are enhance your quality of life. By the way, that's what the county does. We're in the business of making sure that you have quality government service. And what we've seen many instances, people have in essence engaged to tax themselves more and create cities for lack of those services that they depend on. Now, look, the mayor, we don't build schools as far as the county is concerned, but we do have the bully pulpit to advocate for, a parental choice for their kids to have schools. You know, and if that means charter schools, then so be it. You know, we need to work in an area and push as hard as we can so that those that are living in the area have those options on education. Every parent, regardless of where you live in Miami-Dade County, should be afforded the opportunity to have a menu for their kids to be able to go to. Now, not every child, and I'm a public school kid, been one all my life, but I recognize, and not, you know, it can't be a one shoe fit all approach. And, I'd be an advocate, and I'd use the bully pulpit to advocate for better education opportunities. You know, if I recall correctly, I think some of the parents that live in that area, the closest schools possible to them is a bit of a trek for them. And that's unacceptable and really a symptom of maybe poor planning on behalf of the city. And if there was a county involvement, on behalf of the county also.
Thank you, Commissioner Bovo. I'd like to give you the same opportunity, Commissioner Levine Cava. What would you say you would help in terms of advocating for schools for downtown?
Well, first let me say that my background includes advocacy for school children. I represented public school children as part of my work with Legal Services of Greater Miami. And so children would have access to good education, that they would have access to convenient education. And clearly the school system needs to be responsive to the changing demographics of a community. So here it's a great thing that people in the downtown area are clamoring for access to public education. That should be something that would warm the hearts of our school board. And I know we have some school board candidates who will speak later to it. So I would be certainly an advocate to work. Maybe we need to work together to identify property. Maybe the county could have a role in that regard. Certainly we could work together on public awareness and recruitment issues. We have a unique population downtown, of course, very diverse. I think it would be a real feather in the cap of our school system as well as our city of Miami and our county to have schools that would reflect that diversity, international programs, language programs, programs that could interface with finance, business, all the different attributes of the downtown area. So, we wouldn't control at the county exactly what decisions the school board would make, but I am a person who collaborates. I've spoken to the superintendent about ways that the county could be a better partner. During this current administration, there has not been much overlap between the county and the school system. So I would like us to work together, not only to help bring schools downtown, but to have a plan for all of our children. My background is in children's services. I ran the guardian ad litem program. I ran the foster care program. I was on the Children's Trust Board. What we should do is bring together the school system with the Children's Trust, the Early Learning Coalition, the United Way, and others to have a plan for all of our children. And that would include access, obviously, to education.
Thank you. I'll continue with you. The topic of COVID-19 obviously is high on everybody's mind, be it the residents as well as the businesses. Needless to say that we heard earlier from Commissioner Higgins how city and county were not on the same page when it came to providing, guidelines, if you will. Furthermore, the guidelines that were provided were not necessarily adaptable to condominiums and towers. And then the shutdown of the economy did not obviously work well for the CBD, the core business district, whereby, the businesses had to close, unfortunately, because they could not sustain in these conditions. How would you tackle each one of those? Like in the sense of, communication with the city in the sense of understanding the needs of community homeowner associations and in the sense of businesses?
So I, again, a collaborative person. As my whole career has been about building coalitions, bringing people together to come to common ground, make common decisions, work together to engage the community to solve problems. So I was really horrified when we had the disagreements between the cities and the county about how to handle COVID. And I have a very good working relationship with the city of Miami mayor and the other cities as well. In my district, I have 3 cities and 2 more, 1 north and south, that for 6 years we've been meeting on a regular basis and during COVID weekly to plan together, to learn together, to act together. So as mayor, I would be pushing the reset button. It would not have blown up as it did here over COVID. There wouldn't have been a wait until there was money available. We would have already been at the table together working through this crisis and how we would solve it together. So that's the first thing. As far as the proximity, the downtown, the towers, the difficulties, you know, I was very frustrated because Mayor Jimenez was making these edicts under the emergency order system, but we were not meeting for a very long time as this pandemic was unfolding. And after that, mostly we were ratifying what happened after the fact. We were really not given a role as county commissioners to weigh in, and certainly the cities were afterthoughts as well. So, you know, I actually learned a lot about this from Commissioner Higgins, who talked to me exactly about these concerns that you were raising. You know, I know for now, New York City residents are moving out and coming to Miami. They think we've got it under control more so in terms of you know, healthy living. Not that our numbers show the case, but, you know, we need to exactly come up with strategies that will protect our residents, social distancing, disinfection, and all of that, and communicate. And then finally, the homeowners. You know, homeowners associations are, I would say, every elected official's best friends, because you speak with a collective voice. You're educated about the issues. You come forward with logical suggestions how to fix things. I mean, I'm grateful for the collective voice of organized citizenry such as yourselves. And it would be my intention, just as I'm doing now in my district, to work closely with all of the homeowners associations across the whole county and learn from you what are the issues, so we would be in partnership to solve these sorts of problems.
Thank you. Thank you. Same question to you, Commissioner Bovo. Should you win this election, what would you do differently surrounding COVID-19 and the handling of COVID-19?
Well, the first thing I would do is that you have to collaborate with all the cities. I would, upon getting elected, sit down with all 34 mayors of Miami-Dade County and administrators and come with a game plan that is united. You can't have a set of rules for the city of Miami, have a different one for Homestead, and you can't do it for Miami Beach and then Hialeah. They've got to be all uniformed, and we need to be able to educate and speak to our residents so we don't create the confusion that we've seen reigning throughout the entire county. And I think that's where you start. I would look at the curfew and possibly eliminate the curfew, because I don't think the virus goes to sleep at night. And quite honestly, I don't think it helps whatsoever. So I think that's where you start. And then you could go ahead and start engaging, you know, communities, depending on where they're at, to again, start getting our economy moving forward. You know, when we started with this pandemic, the first thing I did in my district was establish a testing site so that residents in my area could get tested. I didn't wait for anybody. I didn't ask permission of anybody. We immediately started to collaborate so we could get the testing. We were testing residents in Hialeah for free when others were going to other places standing in long lines. And then immediately created a working group in my district of doctors, of educators, and of business owners so that we could collaborate to understand what did reopening look like. Because we wanted to make sure we opened in a safe way that was guided with medical advice and counsel. And at the same time, understanding that if our school system didn't come back online, it was going to be impossible for our businesses to be able to come online. You know, and don't underestimate the fact that many people have gone now 7 months without working. The mental stress that has put on many is you know, is difficult. It's difficult for people to be able to navigate this. So I would tell you, if we could collaborate in a way with the cities, with the business owners, with our educators, with our healthcare experts, in a way that we're pointed in a direction of getting people back to normal, which is what people want in our community. They want to go back to normal. And as a mayor, I want to facilitate that and not scare people into thinking that they have to stay in their homes for the next 6 months.
Thank you. Staying with that comment that you made about being scared and staying home, I'd like to segue to security. Obviously, county security is only on county properties, and the city of Miami is the one that oversees the security on the streets of Miami. We have had an incident in the Metro Mover not long ago, and there is an element of criminality, if you will, under the umbrella of the homelessness citizens. What would you do differently to give an assurance to our community that using public transportation is okay and they are safe to take advantage of our Metro Mover and Metro Rail?
I think it starts with obviously safety and security across the board. You know, we need to invest. The reason you pay taxes, and I would invite all of you tonight to take a look at your property tax bill and ask yourself a simple question. Are you paying too little in taxes? And I know what the answer is going to be. You know, we need to invest more in safety and security. Safety and security is the foundation for not just economic development, but opportunity, job creation. You know, safety and security is what allows folks to be able to use our transit system in a safe way. You know, I like to always use, actually my wife as an example here. You know, she travels a lot to Washington, D.C., and she uses their public transit basically because it provides safety. You get off the system into an atmosphere where there is commerce going on, there is housing, there is activity going on. In many of our cases, where you get off of our system, you're walking into a desolate parking lot that is not inviting and could lend to fear and a crime like we saw recently. Now, the board already had a conversation on this. We were going to have more conversations moving forward, specifically on the incidents that happened. And we need to improve. And cameras are not enough. Cameras are not enough. We need to physically to have a presence of security in those stations in order to provide safety and promote ridership. And I will tell you, this is where we need to invest money as homeowners. This is what we expect as homeowners. And I think it's the right investment for many of us.
Thank you. Commissioner Levine Cava, same question.
Thank you. So as soon as I heard about this, which I heard from residents downtown because I'm connected to people everywhere, I heard about the incident the day that it happened, and I reached out to our county police director, and he immediately got engaged with the city, with the security, and immediately deployed, our county police. So I think it's very proper and appropriate that we upgrade clearly the security, not just an outsourced security company, but actual police officers. And I want to commend Commissioner Higgins for taking the initiative to ask the mayor to transfer the long-term responsibility, because of course it is a county responsibility on county transportation, as you say, even though it's within the city of Miami. So those jurisdictional questions are so critical, how our law enforcement agents work together. But as well, I want to point out that we probably had law enforcement until we started reducing the level of security and did that outsourcing. And those outsourced employees, by the way, are not particularly well paid, and they don't even earn sick leave. So our security guards on county payroll, they're doing a job that we have not been really valuing. So clearly we need to step up our game. And by the way, we need to provide paid sick benefits to all of our contract employees, like our security officers during a pandemic who are forced to go to work sick. And unfortunately, my opponent blocked moving forward with that small humanitarian benefit. So, we need to take care of the people that take care of us. Our county police are the finest. They have an incredible record. They've been very effective in avoiding much of the disruption that happened in other cities during these recent rounds of protests. And, I just want to make it very, very clear, because it always comes up, that I did not ever vote to defund police, that I have supported the increased allocation for police every single budget year and stand with our police officers.
Amal, may I respond? Because Commissioner Cava has.
I'm sorry. I need to stay on track, Commissioner.
Moderator.
I need to stay on track. So you will get a chance to talk at the end, trust me, but I just need to be, respectful of everybody's time. So the next topic that I have here, public land. The residents of downtown, the stakeholders, the taxpayers, they feel that every single time there is an opportunity to monetize public land, the city and the county takes advantage of that. A good example would be, and not to say that, it wasn't handled properly, but just to give you an example, Parcel B behind the American Airline Arena, which is a county public lot, and we've been asking constantly to turn that into green space. Green space is critical to us. We need it as urban residents. I would like to start with you, Commissioner Bovo. What is your opinion on green space, and what would you do differently about the public land that the county owns in terms of its allocation and the use towards public best cultural use?
We have a housing crisis in Miami-Dade County that is only going to be addressed if we can take county land that we own, particularly along transit corridors, and use it as leverage to be able to work with developers to address the issues of the rising cost of housing. There are going to be many instances where, while one may desire to have green space or turn that land into parks, we can't be hypocritical and then on the flip side talk about how we're going to address the issue of affordability. When we take county land that we own and we leverage that county land with a developer to create workforce housing, low-income housing, that could be a long-term better use of that space so that we could deal with the issues of affordability. Now, obviously, there could be instances where we could use the land for green space, and it all depends on where the land is. And I was a supporter of the Cuban Exile Museum, which would have promoted not just a museum, but green space behind Parcel B. At the end of the day, that's not the decision the commission wanted to go in, and I'm fine with that. But I think we need to be very, very mindful that a lot of this vacant land that we have all over the county that we own, we are going to need it for what perhaps, if it wasn't for COVID-19, the two main topics would have been transportation and housing. And this is one of the ways that we could deal with our housing issue by putting some of this land into play.
Thank you. Same question to you, Commissioner Levine-Cava.
I do agree that it is really critical that we prioritize affordability and housing with our land, not sacrificing open space and parks. So, we have a really great protection for open land and parks that only the public can approve taking it away, which is really critical. And, while we have some great parks, we also don't have, compared to other great cities, we don't have as much park space. We don't have as many trees. I mean, things that are just kind of basic to beauty and quality of life. So definitely, I am a strong parks proponent. My first year in office, we dealt with the fact that parks had been greatly diminished through recent budgets, and we were able to bring back parks with a 20% increase for park maintenance, for basic property management, for programming in parks. So I am a very huge parks advocate. But housing on county, on any kind of property that is otherwise available, incentivizing developers, completely agree. And that is something that I commend the county for having as a strong policy, but we've not moved quick enough to deploy that space. I have, in my district, the parcels that were available, I put out a competitive bid process. I do think the process should be competitive and criteria set, but that to be said, we need to move actively to bridge the gap of over 100,000 units that we need of housing that people can afford.
Thank you. I'd like to close with one last question to which I ask each one of you to answer with a yes or no. And that's the question of access to your person, access to your personnel. We always feel left behind. We feel like oftentimes representatives do not consider us and our needs as much as they should, and put in place a person that is dedicated to understanding our needs and being present at our meetings if your person is not available. Would you say, should you win this race, that you would make yourself available and extend someone that we would liaise with so that they can hear our concerns and accommodate us? Daniela Levinkova, your answer first.
Definitely yes. Top priority, customer service. You're the customers.
Thank you. Steve Bovo?
It's what I've been doing now for the last 20 years. The policy won't change.
All right. Hopefully you still have my business card. I handed it to you when I met you at the Brickell station. So when we talked about, yeah. All right. Well, thank you both. And with that, I'd like to move to the next segment. The next segment is the race for District 7. With us, we have Raquel Regalado. Oh my God, look at you. Hey, how are you? You're looking great. You're on mute. Unmute yourself. Sorry about that, guys. This is how girls get to, reconnect. And do we have...
you? It's great to see you.
Great to see you as well. Do we have Cindy with us?
Yes.
Hi.
Yes, I'm here.
Hello. Thank you for unmuting yourself. Well, nice to meet you both. So, the kind of giving you 2 minutes to just talk about the top 5 and how you would prioritize them. You've heard me through this rendition, so go ahead. Raquel, let's start with you.
Perfect. Well, first of all, thank you so much for the opportunity to talk about our races and to really, for those people who are watching live and then for everyone who's going to see it later, I think this is a great opportunity to really learn about candidates. It was actually nice to hear some of the other folks because we can touch on some few things. So after hearing everyone, I kind of reorganized my 5 so it would be more like in line with what we've been talking about. So I got to start with parks because we talked so much about parks and green space and a mall. And for those of you who remember, I brought Bringing a Playground to downtown Miami in 2003 when my father was a commissioner. Back then, Tim Schmann was in charge of the Bayfront Trust. I hadn't even had Isabella yet. And it took us years to get them to build a playground. And I remember we all used to joke that if we build a playground downtown, the children will come. And they mocked us, and they did. And it's been a wonderful playground. The city allowed me to let Isabella and Sebastian play in it. They crawled up when we opened it. And look at where we are now. As we talk about schools, I mean, you guys know I did not represent you at the school district in terms of Southside, but we fought the good fight. We took on the school board for the expansion of Southside. We took on the DDA. Back then, the DDA was against our proposal for a high school. We actually had a site. We had the funding. We had developers. It was going to cost the school district nothing. And they refused to afford me the opportunity to provide the residents of Brickell with schooling because they said that the population growth was not enough. Here we are, 7 years later, we're having this conversation again, and finally everybody, it's true, yeah, yeah, 6 years later, we're having this conversation again, and finally everyone's come around.
33 years.
Well, yes, yeah, what I'm saying. When we went to the DDA and they did their report and they did the survey and they told us that parents downtown didn't want schooling, and we all went back and forth and we had the meetings, we had a Twitter town hall, we really tried our best to educate people on how important school seats were for the urban core. Now the district is finally coming around. Academica stepped in because the district did not want to do something, and we were the first ones. And Neto, how many times did we say, listen, anybody come and open a school here at this point? Anybody come? Because we were just so desperate because parents, not only were parents leaving the urban core, But also a lot of people that wanted to live in the urban core could not live there because they had to factor in tuition. And when they factored in tuition, it just didn't make financial sense. So I'm very happy that it's finally become like hip and cool to talk about seats for the urban core, because we've been talking about it for a long time. So as your county commissioner, obviously parks, services, green space, I've always been an advocate, always supported the underline. We got to talk about transit and how to connect parks and transit. That already came up. We've been talking about that forever. As you guys know, I live a few feet away from the Metro Rail station and have been a huge advocate of housing around transit hubs. In 2016, when I ran for mayor, I presented my transportation plan to you guys. You'll remember we talked about how the county had not applied for federal funding. We talked about how Metro Rail needed to go to Broward, and we talked about green space and housing around these areas. Thankfully, after the race in 26, the county applied for federal funding, and the RFP is to go to Broward. We started talking more seriously about the underline. Unfortunately, Parker wasn't able to see it, but Meg has done such an amazing job, and we're so proud of her tremendous effort to really get people to buy into the underline. And finally, we're talking about transit hubs. We have on 27th Avenue, we have on 37th Avenue, they're moving forward. And now we're talking about more connectivity and this idea that there is an Uber generation that wants to ride transit. There are people who do not want cars. My children are part of that generation. I count myself also as a believer. So it's wonderful that we're all kind of, getting to the same point, even though I think it took us a little bit longer than I wish it would have in terms of planning, which takes us to county services. A few people talked about the issues with county services, everything from the county's dominion of the homeless trust, to what happens with transit in terms of security, or what happens in unincorporated Dade in terms of, trash and how that creates dumping in other areas in the city of Miami. So that is huge. And it's so important to have this connectivity between the municipalities and the city. As you guys know, when I was a school board member, I went to all your meetings. I went to all the city meetings. I talked about education. I worked with the DDA, despite the fact that they didn't agree with me. And we really tried to collaborate and be forward thinking, plan 5, 6, 7, 8 years, and really talk about the challenges. And that leads us to COVID-19. I've been so critical of the way that the county has handled it. It has been by edict. It has been without the participation of the county commission. And there's a lot that we can learn from this. I think that the first thing we need to do is change the way we have public meetings and make sure that these types of forums are now included. We're going to have meetings in person, but we need to make sure that we also give people the ability to appear virtually, because as you all know, a lot of people, especially working moms, are able to participate in this way when they couldn't go to county hall or to a school board meeting and participate. We also have to change the way that the meetings are, the information that's brought to the meetings. For example, one thing that we've talked about with you guys a bunch of times is the fact that the People's Transportation Trust makes its recommendation to the county after the committee meeting. They are not obligated to make a recommendation prior to the county committee meeting. And then what happens? We go to the committee meeting, we don't have a recommendation from the People's Transportation Trust, and then we go to the actual meeting and everything's cooked, baked, and done, and nobody cares what the PPP thinks. So one of the things that I've talked about doing and had support of a few county commissioners is to change that so that we're all given more access and more information about the decisions that are going to be made in terms of county money and our county money in particular. And then finally, Biscayne Bay, which is the #1 issue. When I went before you guys in 14 and 16 and talked about septic to sewer, everybody was like, who cares about septic tanks? Well, now we have the Biscayne Bay report. We have the county and the city making eliminating septic tanks a priority. We finally are going to be meeting ocean outfall. We finally got an EPA loan 6 months ago. Once we meet ocean outfall, we get state funding. Then we can get federal funding because we're also meeting the federal requirements of the consent decree. And then we're going to do a revenue bond so that we can have connectivity. And this is important to Brickell too, because even though you don't have a septic problem, you are the ones who live with the disaster that comes from the septic tanks, in our shorelines. And I'm so glad that someone mentioned the Miami Forever bonds. As you guys know, it was my father's baby. You know, we work so hard to talk to people about the importance of having a bond, the importance of really investing in infrastructure to prevent sea level rise, and that it wasn't a partisan issue. This has nothing to do with parties. It's a green issue. It's an everybody issue. We're all on board. And as your county commissioner, I will make sure that the county is helping the cities move this forward. As you guys know, one of our frustrations right now is we haven't seen movement on the Miami Forever bond.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm going to actually allow,
just so you know, that totaled close to 4 minutes. So
yep, I'm going to allow 4 minutes.
Well,
absolutely.
Perfect.
Go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It sounded like much longer than 4. And I was just going to say equal time, please. You've heard from the mayoral candidates and from the District 5 candidates and from my opponent. So much of it has already been addressed and identified, and I can shorten my response somewhat, but I want to talk more about not the bureaucracy of the county, not the protocols of, you know, how to get things accomplished down in the weeds, but more about how do we communicate with, because you had asked about that, how do we best communicate with the constituents in the urban core? You had mentioned the concern for being available and accessible, and that, while I was mayor of Pinecrest for 8 years, was part of the hallmark of my administration. The first couple of years, the Village of Pinecrest didn't even have a newsletter. I congratulate you on starting a new newsletter for the urban core. I started a newsletter and wrote it myself for the first couple of years because I thought it was critically important to communicate and update and thereby engage the residents in what was going on and ask for their input back. In the same vein, I started advisory committees because, again, it's important that those of us who represent know what the feelings are, the interests, the fears of our constituents before we make the decision. They need to understand what's being proposed, what the potential impacts are going to be, and then communicate with those of us who have to make these critical decisions. So having committees to have that dialogue and discussion is critically important. Engaging our youth is critically important. So we had an education committee, a youth advisory committee, a parks committee, and if elected as the commissioner for District 7, I will do the same thing. I will create committees for that district. It's inherent in the way that I operate to engage, to hear what their issues and concerns and desires are from within the urban core and go about planning collaboratively with the city of Miami, because that has been one of the major faults of the county for, I'd say, the last decade. And that has been, they don't understand the meaning of collaboration with other local governments or the state delegation for that matter. And having been president of the Miami-Dade League of Cities, bringing the 34 cities together, going to Mayor Jimenez and saying, it's a priority for me and for us that the county show some leadership and collaborate with the cities in planning for climate change and sea level rise. And we were pushed aside by the mayor. He had no interest in real collaboration, and the results of what's happened during the closing and then reopening of businesses in the community, not engaging, number one, the commissioners. They were not a part of the process, and they're there to represent the concerns of the residents. So I am hopeful with a new commission and a new mayor, new administration, that it will not be business as usual, and we will have the opportunity to reach out, engage our constituents as the commissioners, bring those issues and concerns together as a commission, collaborate with our neighboring municipalities, and plan for the entire county, which has yet to ever be done.
Thank you. Thank you. We really appreciate that. I'm going to bring this back to a question that I asked earlier, and it sounds like that question will reside in your district, and it has to do with the 6 traffic lights that are on the Key Biscayne and their impact on the quality of life of the residents from a traffic perspective. Would you favor allowing the village of Key Biscayne to control its traffic light to optimize its local traffic flux? I'll start with you, Cindy.
Okay. Yes. In fact, not just Key Biscayne, I would favor allowing municipalities to have more determination over their local roadways and the control of it. Certainly, if there are major state roads and county that will have more impact than just within the boundaries of a municipality. But I know from the experience that we had in Pinecrest, we wanted speed bumps or we wanted a lower speed limit. We had absolutely no control over doing that. And that's just wrong. So I would be in favor of allowing local governments to have more control, especially when they want to tighten up and have safer roads and move traffic along as best they see fit.
Thank you. Thank you. Raquel?
Well, as some of you might remember, I represented Ada Merritt, and my first sort of battle with the county was the school lights around Ada Merritt and what was happening in terms of the lack of connectivity with our school sites and the county's traffic lights. So that's where we started talking about the lack of communication. As you guys remember, the part of the issue is in Miami-Dade County around schools, those lights are on all the time. In the summer, on days off, they never stop. They're always blinking. And then what happens is people don't respect them because they don't really know when school's in or when school's out. And it actually creates a lot of congestion. As someone who lives right by a school, I know all too well the impact that it has. So when we started talking about the traffic lights at the county, we talked about it in 16. I think Commissioner Higgins mentioned that now the county finally approved a new system. And it's important to talk about that contract and that rollout when we talk about jurisdiction, because of course, we all want the cities to have jurisdictional control over the intersections that impact them, but we want to make sure that it is a working system because the brain of the system as purchased by Miami-Dade County will remain under Miami-Dade County control. So, when we talk about how this is going to be rolled out in the next 6 to 3 years, which is really the time that it'll take to change all these lights, we need to bring the municipalities in to be part of this conversation because their police officers and their local folks know better the problems that we have in these intersections. I've met with the mayor of Key Biscayne on their particular lights, and they've been asking the county for help for a very long time, but it's not just simply a handover, right? The county owns the system, so we need to make sure that the system still works, that the warranties are still in place, that we can still upgrade it, and that we can provide people with the best particular use. And we have to bring in the school board and synchronize the ones around the school and make sure that it is coordinated with the school calendar because people who live around schools are also impacted by this.
Thank you. Thank you. I'll continue with you, Raquel, to the environment topic and the sea rise and the project of the Army Corps surrounding the wall. What is your take on that? And what will you in person do to get involved so that that project, from concept to creation does not morph into a gigantic Godzilla?
Right. Well, I think we're all against the gigantic wall. I think, we have to have a conversation about how that project came about and the lack of communication, because, as was mentioned, the city of Miami has a plan. The DDA actually spent a lot of time and a lot of money thoughtfully constructing alternatives. But at the end of the day, the Army Corps will only speak to Miami-Dade County, because Miami-Dade County is the only jurisdiction that they recognize as being able to speak on this wall. So somewhere along the way, the county did not contact the cities or the organizations in time so that they can present this plan to the Army Corps of Engineers. We need to remedy that. Now that everybody's kind of proposing different ideas, it is incumbent upon the county commission to really make sure that those stakeholders participate in this and that we incorporate that in our official response to the Army Corps of Engineers. You know, I grew up in Miami-Dade County, born and raised. I tell people all the time, you know, I used to ride my bike on Brickell when it was just 4 buildings and mangroves. We all know how important the mangroves islands are, how we need to have gray area, how we need to create a barrier. And this isn't just about storm surge. This is about having a complete and comprehensive system that works with the infrastructure plans by Miami Forever, but also takes into account what the county needs to do in their part protecting this area. So it needs to be a #1 priority. Everyone needs to have a seat at the table, and we need to make sure that the Army Corps of Engineers hears our plan with one voice.
Thank you, thank you. Cindy, I'd like to build on my question. We heard that the Army Corps are not necessarily amicable to hearing from the public. So as you're commenting on that question that I asked, would you comment on how you would allow the public to have a voice in this process?
Sure, thank you. If you look at the Army Corps' approach to sea level rise, their recommendation for this mega seawall isn't unique to Miami-Dade County. They actually are recommending it all up and down the coast. They recommend it Staten Island and other areas. So, you know, it's that mentality. If you have a hammer, everything's a nail, something like that. So the Army Corps has an approach that they just kind of blanket, here's what we have to offer you. Shortly after I was elected mayor, the very first summit for the Southeast Florida Regional Climate Compact was presented in Miami-Dade County, and I attended it, and I absorbed everything I heard. And I took to heart the obligation. I felt that climate plan was speaking to me. You have a responsibility as a local government to go out and assess your vulnerabilities and then address them by planning for your capital projects and how to both best adapt. Talking to other municipalities, it became very clear that many of them, not having known about the Regional Climate Compact because there was no leadership coming out of the county, they were not working on this issue at all. Some are minimally, at 10 years later, only starting that process. So the first step, I believe, is for the county to go out and do a county-wide vulnerability assessment. It's never been done countywide. They've looked at little areas here and there throughout the county. Countywide vulnerability assessment includes not just the infrastructure and the buildings and the physical plant, it includes the populations. And that's where the outreach to the communities comes in, because we have very vulnerable populations all over the county. There's a wonderful organization, Miami Climate Alliance, that I've participated in for years. And they have a series of committees where they try to self-empower themselves. What do you do to be more resilient? What do you do to address with a coming hurricane? And they operate completely separate from the county. County has never engaged with all of these organizations that network into the community. So how do we do that? By doing a countywide plan, looking at vulnerable populations, and it's going to be critical that the county commission creates its own committee, a committee that is devoted only to sea level rise and climate change, so that it can't be shoved under the rug under other issues.
Thank you. Thank you. So for the last minute, I'm going to ask the same closing question that I've asked every participants in prior segments. Obviously, the importance of having access to your person, should you win this race, or someone that we can liaison with from your office so that they can hear our concerns and attend to them. Starting with you, Cindy, would you say that this is something that you would promise the Key Biscayne constituents should you win this race?
The entire district, yes. I've given out yes, yeah. The entire district. I have given out my cell phone number for my entire public career. So people know that they can reach me directly. Sometimes they're surprised that I am so freely accessible, but I am boots on the ground. I always have been. So for those who want my cell phone number, 305-992-3433.
Thank you. Thank you. And Raquel?
Yes, well, first and foremost, you guys know I was always at your meetings. I'll always be at your meetings. While I was on the school board, I physically went to all the city meetings and all the neighborhood meetings, even though people said the school board members didn't do that. So I would be more than happy to continue that as your county commissioner. I'm excited about working together and really seeing to fruition a lot of things that we've been talking about for the urban core for the last decade. All of you have my cell phone, but I put it on there anyway. It's 786-306-9180. You know, I think that here we have a tremendous opportunity to effectuate change and to really have a generational change at the county commission, and I want to be part of that. And for our friends in Key Biscayne, as you all know, I knocked on your doors over a decade ago, and you told me that 38 years waiting for a high school. I got you a high school. It was hard fought, but we did it. And hopefully in the next few years, we can say that we could do the same for Brickell. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you both very much. I'd like to move to our next and last segment, which is the board representatives for District 3 for Miami-Dade County Public Schools race. And Lucia Baez-Geller and Russ Ryle are with us. Thank you for being with us. Thank you for sticking since the beginning of this meeting. I saw both of you, so you were patiently sitting there. And I must admit that you are the crème de la crème because your topic is the most important thing for us. You heard me earlier, we need schools, we need education for our children. We feel we are entitled given the amount of taxes that we pay, given the amount of children that we have in our district. And unfortunately, we are limited in the capacity that is available in Southside as well as in other buildings, if you will. So I want to spend the full time here talking about this, starting with you, Lucia. What would you say you would do should you win this race in terms of tackling the need of downtown for schools?
Yes, and thank you so much for having me. It's great always to be here with Brickell and downtown. I've spent time in all parts of the district, and what I've learned is that we cannot use a one-size-fits-all approach. And so what I've learned at Brickell is that everybody here in the urban core, as we know, wants to live, work, play here in the neighborhood, and that's important. So should I have the privilege of being elected, we're gonna continue working, first of all, of course, for safety, to make sure that we're transitioning in the next month or two, continue transitioning into our face-to-face schools. But once we've overcome that, the plan is to continue expanding the facilities, making sure that we have enough seats and enough buildings to kind of keep up with the growth of the urban core. We also want to make sure that we have a diversified curriculum. We know Southside Prep is a museum magnet school. We want to make sure that we continue providing these wonderful options, whether it's magnet or just different programs, and that we continue working with all types of cultural institutions, whether it be the Arts Center, opera, whatever it is, that we continue expanding these partnerships. we also want to make sure that we plan for sustainable growth. Often we're making short-term fixes here in our school system, and we really need long-term solutions, especially as we've seen with the having not enough seats for our schools. And we want to give a return on the investment that you all are making. And how we're going to get there is make sure that we are learning from one another, the community, and myself as your school board member, that we're constantly in communication, that we're working with the HOAs, PTSAs, and that the relationship works both ways. Also that we're not just implementing that, but that we're listening. We also want to be equitable and fair, and make sure that we're reviewing our spending practices to make sure that every community is getting their needs met. And then of course we want to make sure we have transparency and accountability, that we're asking the right questions, that as I hear from you all, the stakeholders, that I am an advocate for you while I'm at the school board.
Thank you, thank you. To you, Mr. Rael?
That's Rywall, thanks. I'll try to be brief since it's late and answer the question specifically. Having lived in New York and lived in Singapore and worked there, I understand what it's like to live in a crowded urban environment and the needs of that. And you, right here in Brickell, have the second highest per square foot value of anywhere in the district. So you are paying a great deal of money and you're not getting your money's worth. So how do we bring a school to your area? And it involves a creative solution, because what's been working in the past hasn't actually worked. So let's try to think creatively how to do that. The first thing I would try to do is save money, because I'm a finance guy. So let's look at partnerships, okay? Could we do a public-public partnership with, say, a municipal charter like Aventura did, where we can find some land and then set up a charter school that has accountability and will be there in perpetuity. Maybe we can help fund that with naming rights, like they did with Don Sofer. Amal, if you've got the money, we'll make it the Amal School if you want. And then we could look at public-private partnerships as well, right? We have developers all the time, and we say, okay, we want you to take some space for affordable housing. Why not talk to them about reserving some space for schooling? We have to think outside of the box. And once we extinguish these partnership ideas, it still comes down to a funding issue for us. So for the district, we need to look at things like land sales, closing underutilized sites to increase the funding, and perhaps even doing another general obligation bond. So I think if we're creative, if we look at partnerships, if we look at funding, if we look at every possible piece of land and person to run the school effectively and with accountability, then we can start to solve your problem, which you very much deserve to have solved.
Thank you. I'm going to continue with you, Mr. Rywell. Hopefully I pronounced it properly this time. So you mentioned the Amal School, and obviously I'll take you up on that. The footprint of downtown, the urban core, is distinct between the areas of Brickell, if you will, and the areas of the CBD. And today, when we think about the CBD, which is the Central Business District, which is, if you think about it, from the Miami River on the south side all the way to the Arch Center, if you will, on the north side, our children can only go to the south side elementary school if they win on the lottery. That is very concerning. What would you do to ensure that our children, A, have enough seats, or B, find, you know, a physical school to be put in our neighborhood?
It's basically the same kind of answer that I gave before. The same approach, partnerships, funding approach, land, right? I mean, a pretty good example of that is the fact that the county as school system had their headquarters right there, and they're currently negotiating a deal with developers to move that headquarters, okay? So what we have to do is we have to look at that and bring the residents into it. We need the feedback from you all so that your voice is heard on the board. I will do that so that we can make sure that when those opportunities arise, the the people that need representation get that representation. Now that technically wouldn't be in District 3, I believe, but I would fight for it just as I would fight for any place in Miami-Dade County, because it's one big school system. And it only works if you get all the pieces right. If you build a great school somewhere like Southside and the other surrounding areas don't have schools, guess what? Everybody wants to get in the lottery. Everybody wants to hop the boundary. We need a global solution that makes sense, and I'm the person to do it. Thank you.
Thank you. Lucia, to you, if you want to unmute yourself.
Yes, thank you. So yeah, so when we have a need in the community like that you're describing, we want to make sure that the first thing that we do is listening, that we're providing the community opportunity to give input, to increase their participation, make sure their voices are heard. And then we want to make sure that everyone has access to the resources that they need to succeed. So I would, of course, advocate for a change to the rules to allow our students to go to the schools in their neighborhood. For them to have priority, they should be able to go to the schools in their boundaries. And we want to make sure that we're working with the stakeholders to build more capacity within our schools, and that every student has access to the schools and not just via a lottery. And we don't want to leave any of our students behind in this case. And I'm someone that believes strongly in neighborhood public schools, so we want to make sure that everyone has access to it and that we're providing a venue for that.
Thank you, thank you. I'd like to move on to the topic of enrollment. It sounds like there is a chronically low enrolled and underperforming rating, if you will. How do we strengthen this from a short-term, mid-term, and long-term so that the urban core feeder patterns to ensure comparable excellence throughout? Lucia, I'll start with you.
Yes, and when it comes to enrollment, we want to make sure that we have a quality education for all of our students, whether the school is highly enrolled or under-enrolled. We want to make sure that everybody has access to that. So we want to make sure that we have consistent protocols in place where students have access to the latest facilities, the latest technology, that we're also working with organizations to provide schools that edge that they need, that we're hosting roundtables, focus groups, and that we have access to cutting edge education technology, but especially that we are removing the barriers that are really causing our schools to become under-enrolled, whether it's that we don't have the curriculum that people need, or there's a transportation issue, or that there's a curriculum issue. We want to be partnering with as many people as possible to remove these barriers so that our families can feel that the schools here in our urban core are safe, and that in moving forward, we're delivering the best quality instruction for all.
Thank you, thank you. Mr. Rywell. You may want to, yep.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, here's the situation with your feeder pattern. Southside has been an A school for at least the last 3 years. Shenandoah, a C, and Booker, a C, also for the last 3 years. So that's the fundamental problem that's occurring in the feeder pattern, and that ultimately leads to the enrollment pattern. So you have to go at the root cause. So the question is, how do we get those school grades up? How do we get those schools better? How do we get the people to believe in the feeder pattern and stick with it? And once again, it involves partnerships, it involves creativity, it involves curriculum, and it involves activities. Let me give you one example, okay? My campaign manager is a 20-year-old ex-student. He is going to college on a full scholarship from the Posse Foundation. The Posse Foundation is based in Brickell, okay? Why aren't they being closely involved with those schools? Why aren't their students being counseled to apply for those scholarships as he was in Miami Beach Senior High? We can bring a STEAM program to Southside. Let's bring things like STEAM to other schools so that they become a more desirable base. And finally, let's not miss the opportunity of this COVID crisis to reevaluate the way we teach and what's effective and what's not. And if we invest in these schools with programs, with partnerships, we make them better schools, we make them better rated schools, and then you solve the enrollment problem and you solve the boundary problem at the same thing. That's what the school board is there for, and that's what I'm going to do.
Thank you. The next question comes from a parent who has concerns about a personal experience. So I'm going to read verbatim what they wrote. Imagine yourself as one of the more than 8,000 families with children living in Miami's urban core. You are the proud parent of an 11-year-old daughter who lives in the downtown Brickell area. Your child is in an average to below average student with special needs issues who is preparing to leave Southside K-8 for high school. After reviewing all the educational options available to you and your family as residents of the urban core, where would you send your child to school and why? Could you put yourself in their shoes and answer that question? I'll start with you, Mr. Rywell.
Okay, well, first of all, in some ways I can put myself in those shoes and in some ways I can't. But let me start by saying I am a parent. I raised a daughter. I've gone through these decisions, so I know what it feels like to have concerns. And my significant other has dealt with children with special needs. So I understand that situation. So here's the problem. You have a situation in Southside that seems to work. And now you have to go find something else. Now, in the ideal world, and I can't put myself in that person's position because I haven't lived where you are. In the ideal world, there is an alternative within the public school system that works effectively. And if that alternative doesn't exist, then we need to make sure that it does exist. And I will put my political capital and efforts into making sure that we look for every single kid's success, whether that's special needs, whether that's gifted, whether English language learners. We have all kinds of children here. Now, if that is not available now, I know there are things like McKay scholarships and Gardner scholarships with children with specific needs that is mandated by the state, where they can get a scholarship to a private school that fits their needs better if that's the necessity of that case. I don't know how severe the case is and if it would warrant that. But those are the alternatives that I would look at as a parent. Clearly, I would want my child to have the best educational experience for that particular child.
Thank you. To you, Lucia.
Thank you. So absolutely, every parent, what they want is for their children to be in the best situation for them. So as a school board member, I would be there to listen and make sure that we have the best facilities and academics for students from all backgrounds and of all needs. So we want to, as a parent in this person's shoes, I would be looking for a school that has a track record of a holistic education where they are tending to the whole child, where they're working closely with families to identify the needs of every student, and that they're faithful to the IDEA requirements, and that they are providing students opportunities from all backgrounds. In an immediate concern, I would want to actually visit the facility, make sure, review their practices and policies, make sure that they have appropriate institutional practices that are responsible and that tend to the needs of each student. We also want to make sure in a school how they're navigating the relationship with the parents. And so having a student in this situation, we want to make sure that, you know, transportation is being considered and that pretty much all the needs of the students are being met. And then in that case, like we said, We want to make sure that we have enough choices and options for that student where they are going to feel in general that they're getting the best opportunity for their child.
Thank you, Lucia. I'm going to stay with you, and I'm going to circle back on that lottery question that I asked earlier. Obviously, there is a component, if you will, or a section of the downtown urban core that still is under District 3. So particularly, let's say, the One Miami and 50 Biscayne, part of these, these towers closer to the river are part of District 3. So back to the question of the lottery and not having the allocated amount of seats for our children, what would you do to mend that, should you win this race?
Absolutely. So we want to meet the communities where they are. We want 100% participation from all those areas that you mentioned. We want to have a diversity of voices, and we want to have a response, and not always for people to be met with barriers or obstacles. And we have to have the facilities in the schools available. So we want to meet the communities, listen to them, hold the town halls, and then most importantly, ease the access to information. Because what I find is a lot of times, we send out information, but we don't do the follow-up. And so there's a lot of opportunities to communicate that are being lost, and a lot of contact with people that is just not happening, and we're not hearing a variety of concerns. And I will make sure that we have that. I'm going to be the greatest ally for all the communities, in the district and here as well. And I'm going to be relying on the communities to bring their concerns so that we can work toward having the options that we need so that parents can send their children to the schools that they deserve.
Thank you. Mr. Rywell, would you like to add anything to the comment that you gave me earlier when I asked that question?
No, I think I dealt with it pretty well. I just wanted to say that I did not mean that the entire area was out of the district. I think you clarified it, that some is and some isn't.
Thank you. I'd like to move to COVID-19 and the whole topic of obviously the concerns of families sending their children to schools, and what does that mean in terms of the safety and the transmission of the virus. We feel that the public servants and the government is not handling it quite well, and we are trying to understand how you would be working with your colleagues on the school board and the superintendent, and whether it is at the local level, at the Tallahassee, or at the national level. And what will you do to help restore the people's faith in their school system? And how would you represent us when talking about such a topic? Sorry, Mr. Rywell, I'll start with you. Sorry.
Yeah. Thank you. Am I unmuted? I think so.
You are.
Okay. So this is obviously an extremely important question that's on everybody's mind. So let's talk about what it's going to take to successfully navigate this COVID process and problem. First of all, it's going to take more communication and coordination with the state, local, and municipal authorities. What we saw in the last school board meeting and the opening of schools should never have happened. Okay, we can't have a situation where we have a plan, the state thinks we have a plan, we change the plan, the state says you can't change the plan, they threaten funding, we go back and change that plan again. That is not the process of an effective solution. We need to coordinate with the authorities at all levels ahead of time when you're making the plan. I think Superintendent Carvalho tried to do that in the beginning with the very first plan. So one, you need to coordinate all the different levels of government to make sure that they're not working at cross ends, or else you end up with a mess. The next thing you need is accountability. I think we saw that in spades with the K-12 platform and the problems that we had with the platform and the actual county system. If you're going to do something at a scale that we're doing it, and a lot of people are like, well, how come it worked in the charter school? Or how come it worked in the private school? This is 350,000 students. You need to carefully test. That program was not even available to the teachers to use live till a couple of days, like some of them got it Thursday, some of them got it Friday, some of them got it over the weekend before they went live. And that's unacceptable. So we need to make sure that that response is correct. And right now, while we're tracking, you know, the last forum that we had, you guys were very concerned about contact tracing. I think it's very important. The dashboard that the county has seems to have a lag in their reporting the cases. And we need to make it transparent. We have to get those cases out there quickly so the parents can make the right choices, the teachers can make the right choices for their health and for the health of the students. So that's what we need. We need transparency, we need accountability, and we need coordination, and then we'll get through it. And I'm ready to do that.
Thank you. Lucia?
Yes, so, you know, obviously this has been a huge, the way we've handled everything has been a huge disappointment to teachers, families, students, and more disappointing was seeing the school board really buckle under the pressure of the state, and at the same time as the governor was loosening up the restrictions. It was clearly not going to be a good combination. And so what I could have been doing differently had I been there already is, first of all, the board had a lot of time to plan for this situation. And unfortunately, for all those months in the summer, that was not done. And so we want to make sure in moving forward that when we're planning for these implementation and these technicalities, that we're talking to teachers, that we are including the routine of their day-to-day work, that we are communicating and that we're allowing them to review the protocols so that in any case, we can be sure that these are going to be tried and true measures. We also want to be working on the enforcement of what routines we're going to be doing on. So in redesigning their work day and instruction and day-to-day, teachers need to know who they can turn to and who will be kind of accountable for the fact and ensuring their safety and that people do not get sick. They want to feel protected and they want to know that there's somebody that they can turn to there. And unfortunately, that's really not the case, especially as we're hearing of all these cases coming up. There's no consistency in how people are getting information. And in fact, the MDCPS dashboard with the COVID cases is not being updated in a timely manner. The information from the state is not in a timely manner, and there's really no consistency. So we want to have that. We want to have teacher voices, we want to have consistency, and we want to have the resources available. Teachers are being told clean desks after every class, but what's going to happen after a week or two when all of their wipes are gone? Where are they going to come from? So we need realistic, tried and true measures where we can ensure that people's health is a priority.
Thank you. I will continue with you, Lucia. And this time I would like to get your thoughts on the issue of realignments of the city board and committees, specifically when it comes to the realignment of the Education Advisory Board that has been recently done by the city of Miami and the loss of that Education Advisory Board with the establishment of a Quality of Life and Human Rights Committee in its au lieu de, if different from the current plans, what are your thoughts on that, and how would you offer to partner with the city for reforming and reorganizing their education advocacy efforts?
Oh, well, absolutely. We want to make sure that we maintain that contact with our community and that there's an inclusive kind of environment when it comes to ruling our schools. We want someone that asks tough questions, fights for them, holds people accountable, but community stakeholders are really at the core of everything that we do. We also want to make sure that there's equity in representation on these boards and that there's variety and that people from all walks of life are included also in making these decisions. And we want everyone to have a seat at the table. We want to speak to the diversity of this district, of everybody in it. And we want to have authentic, real world solutions for the very real concerns in our neighborhood schools. We want to fix the gaps that we're seeing And we want the practices of everybody on these boards to be from diverse background, including businesses, parents, teachers, and to make sure, and that's really what I strongly believe is an inclusive environment that's responsible and that brings a lot of people to the table.
Thank you. Mr. Rywell?
Yes. Okay. So, you know, most municipalities have some kind of advisory board for the educational process and for the school system. And that board can be a very effective board if it's set up properly and the coordination is done well with the city or the municipality. For example, in my particular school, Miami Beach Senior High, it's part of the beach feeder pattern, and the city has the Quality of Education Committee. That committee has a person from the city staff right in the committee. That committee usually has the board member in attendance every time. That committee has representatives from all the PTAs and commissioners that are there. And so it can function and take the community's needs and give them effectively to a municipality, and they pass concrete resolutions and ideas. You know, we want an ordinance like this. We want to change the traffic pattern. You mentioned the light system with the commissioners. Okay, we just had 2 joggers that were hit, 1 killed right by Miami Country Day and a public school. Those are the kinds of issues that if you link either the homeowners associations or the municipalities directly with the school board, with a committee that has actual teeth and can propose resolutions and follow up with them, then you can have an effective communication loop and make the system better for all the residents and their families, which is ultimately what we need to do and what I want to do on the school board.
Thank you. I'll stay with you for the last question for this segment. And you've seen the commentary that went between Ernesto and Raquel Regalado earlier about how ironic that, you know, 30 years later, and we're still talking about the expansion of Southside Elementary. Do you support this project, Mr. Rywell, yes or no?
I'm sorry, that was the expansion or the school?
Of the Southside K-8 with a new upper school located on land formerly owned by the federal government, Department of Housing, and in the Northwest Brickell area.
Yes, I do.
And thank you. And how will you help ensure the timely completion of this vital community project?
It's the same thing as holding accountability and meeting deadlines that I did when I ran a multi-business in Singapore, but you have to stay on top of it, and you also have to interface with the contractors as well and make sure that they feel that not only are they doing well, but the county is doing its part in paying them timely and getting the project done. That's the ultimate goal, to stay on top of it from both sides. That's the supervisory role of the board, that's the financial responsibility, and that's what we owe to the constituents. And that's the background that I come from, and that's what I will be best at, or one of the things I will be best at, to get these projects done, to get them on time, and to make sure they're done safely and correctly.
Thank you. Same last question to you, Lucia.
Yes, of course. I do support the expansion, and I support doing even more for the community to make sure that the projects are done in a timely fashion, that we acknowledge any obstacles or barriers to completion ahead of time, that we are intentional of identifying, that we have task forces, that we have committees involved and created, that the public is informed of progress, and that we're staying behind the tasks and establishing deadlines and timelines in a realistic fashion, that we're staying true to it, and again, updating everybody on our progress so we can keep everybody accountable.
Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to moderate this evening. Sam, I turn this over to you.
Thank you very much, Amal. Wow, what an evening. Thank you, candidates. Again, what a wonderful evening, providing us some wonderful information and making it hard for us to make our decisions. I want to thank Christy House again for access with the Zoom. I want to thank our partners, BHA, DNA, RNA, BAA, all the acronyms in the core. Again, the candidates, your staff, And your campaigns have been amazing. We really appreciate you devoting your time and your energy to come and talk to us about how you're going to make the core better and fulfill that promise that was made to us of a place where we can all live, work, learn, and play together safely. Please check out the Urban Core Voter Guide, the Core News Updated Elections Edition, which is out there, and get out and vote. Get out and vote. Make a decision. Recruit.
Yeah, Sam, can you give me the courtesy of saying something?
Yes, please.
You didn't allow me to say much this evening, but I will say whatever I want. You know how I am. But yeah, I want to thank all the candidates for being tonight with all the residency on the Brickell area. But the most important thing is that we have been promoting people to vote, and that's fine. But I think that we're missing a point here. There is a lot of people that are going to start voting next month, and there's still people sending votes. But it's not only about voting, it's about voting smart. And what we have to do, and I hope that BHA and USCC start sending a message to the voters, please get involved in the platforms of the candidates. Know them, know what is they have on the agenda. Because you know what? Unfortunately, some voters, they vote emotionally. That's a mistake. This community is not stupid. We have been fooled by the system, by the district system and the schools 33 years ago. 33 years ago, we went to the polls, we voted for the school bonds, and nothing happened. And 33 years later, that's why we support the charter school, because the system failed. The problem that we're having in the county is because the system is failing. The problem that we're having in the city is because the system is failing. We are electing the wrong people, you know, and we have to get smart. And that's the problem that we are having. It's not only about votes, it's about voting smart. So please, the voters, get involved, learn the platforms of your candidates. Don't let people fool you. I'm going to give you an example. The latest campaign that I heard, and I have to bring this to everybody's attention, that's to show you that we are taking for granted. For a candidate to say that is a practicing Catholic, to say that the Catholic doctrine supports abortion, that is two things. Either you are ignorant or you are a liar. So those are a simple sample that I'm giving you, not to be stupid. Learn, get involved. Who supports our state of Israel? Who supports our democracy? Who supports freedom of speech? Who supports, you know, better schools? That's what we have to vote for. Okay, don't be fooled by those people that are trying to give, you know, this type of stupid political campaigns that they're trying to fool you. Okay, go to the results and go to the platforms. And not only that, check their faith and their integrity and honesty and transparency. That's what we have to do for. Thank you so much, and God bless America, and let's go to vote smart.
I leave you with the Change Miami campaign.
That's it.
We start today, Changing Miami. Thank you, everybody. If you haven't sent your ballot in already, get it filled out. I'm working on mine right now as we speak. Get out and vote. Make sure and take 10 friends with you. Appreciate it. Enjoy the rest of the evening's activities that I heard are pretty good.
Thank you.
Bye, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
See you next week for November.